Hi everyone, welcome back to chapter 5 of WYSIWYG by Mallory Blackman. This chapter is called It's Not Me, and so far we've met young Ben, who has discovered an alien creature in his bedroom called WYSIWYG. Now WYSIWYG is able to grant accidental wishes, so when people make wishes by accident. So in the last chapter we had a nosy neighbour, Mrs. Leonard, that came round, and she helped herself to Ben's breakfast and was being such a gossip that Ben's mum got cross and said, "Oh, I wish her tongue was hinged," and various other strange wishes about her tongue. So we're going to find out what happens next. Okay. Ben and Mum reached the top of the stairs. Ben looked around for WYSIWYG, but she was nowhere in sight. Ben was worried. He couldn't help it, even though he had a sort of Christmas and birthday feeling swirling around in his stomach. Something good tremendous or bad tremendous was about to happen. But what? All of a sudden there was a terrible shriek. Ah! They both froze. What on earth? That's Mrs. Leonard, Mum said. Mum raced down the stairs and into the kitchen, closely followed by Ben. Mrs. Leonard was on her feet, staring at Dad. "Don't do that, Mr. Sinclair, it's very cruel of you," Mrs. Leonard screamed. "Not as cruel as you've been over the years, spreading rumours and gossip and hurting people's feelings." Ben stared at Mrs. Leonard. He could hardly believe it, and he certainly didn't understand it. But that last remark had definitely come from Mrs. Leonard's mouth. "Daniel, what are you doing?" Mum frowned at Dad. "I'm not doing anything," Dad protested. "Mrs. Leonard has gone off her head and right round the twist. She's talking to herself." "I'm not talking to myself," Mrs. Leonard squealed. "Yes, you are. Besides, who else would want to talk to you?" Mrs. Leonard's mouth opened, but her words were as much of a surprise to her as they were to everyone else in the kitchen. More so, to judge by the look on her face. Her hands flew to her throat. Her lips were pressed tight together until they were just one thin line, and her eyes were as big as dinner plates. Her gaze darted around the room as if she still couldn't believe that the words were coming from her mouth. "Mum, what's the matter with Mrs. Leonard?" Ben frowned. "I don't know," Mum said slowly. "There's nothing wrong with me," Mrs. Leonard quaked. "Nothing that a good padlock on your mouth couldn't cure." Mrs. Leonard had opened her mouth, and the words just fell out. "Daniel, are you sure?" Mum began. "I promise it's not me," Dad denied. "I'm asleep, that's what it is. I'm dreaming," said Mrs. Leonard, nodding her head vigorously. "I'll wake up in a minute." "It's a pity your tongue never goes to sleep." Once again the words just spilled out of Mrs. Leonard's mouth. "Ah!" Mrs. Leonard clapped both hands over her mouth and ran screaming from the kitchen. Moments later the front door was slammed shut. Ben, Mum and Dad stared at each other. Then they burst out laughing until soon all three of them were holding their stomachs, tears of laughter running down their cheeks. And poor Mrs. Leonard started saying things that she wasn't in control of. "Well, I know I said that woman should have her tongue hinged in the middle, but this is ridiculous." Mum wiped the tears from her eyes. Immediately Ben stopped laughing. "WYSIWYG!" Ben looked around. There, just visible above the front door, was the Oricon. Ben ran out of the kitchen. "WYSIWYG, was that you?" Ben whispered. "Did you make Mum's wish about Mrs. Leonard's tongue come true?" WYSIWYG grinned. "Yup, and she made 2 wishes actually, so that is my spombungulator and my parflange fixed. 2 items down, only 21 to go." "What do you mean, only 21 to go?" said Ben, worried. 23 items on my ship were in need of repair. Therefore I have to grant 23 wishes. With your mother's 2 wishes, that leaves me only 21 more wishes to grant before my ship is completely repaired and ready to leave this planet," said WYSIWYG. At last I feel like I am getting somewhere. I have actually started to repair my ship." "But you can't go around granting wishes to people who don't mean them," Ben said quickly. "People wish for all kinds of things they don't really mean. And what about Mrs. Leonard's tongue? How's she going to talk to anyone with her tongue hinged in the middle and arguing with her all the time?" WYSIWYG frowned. "I thought that was the whole point." "WYSIWYG! Do not worry, my wishes only last for 90,061 yenvings, except in very special circumstances," smiled WYSIWYG. "How long?" Ben squeaked. Even Mrs. Lennard didn't deserve to have her tongue quarrel with her for the rest of her life and beyond. And poor Mrs. Lennard didn't have much time left anyway. She was ancient, 35 at least. 90,061 yenvings add up to 1 whole day and night, 1 hour, 1 minute, and 1 second on your planet," said WYSIWYG. "A little after this time tomorrow morning, your neighbour will be back to her usual self." Ben sighed with relief. Thank goodness for that. "I think I will go and check on my spunbungulator and my parflange," WYSIWYG said. "Is your window open? Can I still get to the roof that way?" Ben nodded. "See you tonight, then," said WYSIWYG. "Tonight? Won't I see you before then?" asked Ben, dismayed. "Nope. It will take all day to reset my spunbungulator and check the star chart in formation in my parflange, but I will be with you before you go to sleep," said WYSIWYG. "But I wanted to ask you all sorts of questions," said Ben, "and I have to go to bed early tonight. I've got to go to school tomorrow." "School, a place of learning and knowledge," WYSIWYG said eagerly. "I have questions to ask about this place. I shall come with you tomorrow and learn about your school." "Oh, but..." "See you later, Ben," said WYSIWYG. And before Ben could say another word, WYSIWYG tucked in her arms and off she went, bouncing against the ceiling as she made her way upstairs. "Ben, who are you talking to?" Dad popped his head out from the kitchen to ask. Just myself, Dad, just myself." Ben gave a weak smile. Dad frowned. "First sign of madness, you know. You don't want to end up like Mrs. Lennard, do you?" Ben shook his head vigorously. No, he most certainly did not. "Come for your breakfast, Ben," called Mum. Slowly Ben walked into the kitchen. Already he could see that having WYSIWYG around, granting wishes left, right and centre, was going to be tricky. In fact, worse than tricky, trouble. But it was also going to be fun. And the next chapter is called The Kissing Wish. See you next time. Bye.